FBI Director Kash Patel has reportedly found burn bags filled with Obamagate documents in a secret room at the FBI headquarters. I thought most of their rooms would probably be secret. Just last month, Patel told Jason's favorite, Joe Rogan, about discovering this room early in his tenure.
Me, as the director of the FBI, the former Russiagate guy, when I first got to the Bureau, found a room that Comey and others hid from the world in the Hoover building, full of documents and computer hard drives that no one had ever seen or heard of. Locked the key and hid access and just said, no one's ever going to find this place.
What's that smoke in that room? Okay, well, now we may know it was in the FBI room. Multiple burn bags filled with thousands of documents. One source says that among these documents was the classified annex to John Durham's special counsel report, including the underlying evidence he reviewed. This evidence allegedly showing that the intel community had credible foreign sources demonstrating that the FBI would be used to further the Trump-Russia collusion narrative. Once that evidence is declassified, it will be sent to Senate Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley's office for public release.
No excuses. This heart is guilty. I ain't no saint. My knees are poison. Send me down. Send me down. Oh. Send me low. Send me low. Send me low. Where the flame? Where the flames of justice glow. I deserve the pit. Oh, that's it. Send me down. Oh. Send me low. Send me low. Send me low. Where the flame? Where the flames of justice glow. I deserve the pit.
That's a good one. I love it. Is that American Gangster? I love that one. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a gangster show for you. Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, Jack Poso on the show. We are going to deconstruct and destroy the deep state. What is the future of justice in America is going to be the topic of today's program. And it's going to be a damn good one. Today, the last day of July, America Month, American Pride Month. It's been a beautiful one. July 31st, today, Thursday, 2025. Trump Russiagate probe whistleblower comes forward to reveal that they were pressured by Obama intel officials personally to rig the 2016 election against Donald Trump. Tulsi Gabbard has declared that the 2020 election had vulnerabilities for Donald Trump. Boy, it'd be nice to have a show where we could ask her live, and I think we'll do that, ladies and gentlemen. Kash Patel announcing that secret stashes of documents were kept in burn bags in the FBI. What the hell is that about? What's a burn bag exactly? Be a great show to ask Matt Gaetz, the potential future attorney general. How do you call that? What's his preferred pronouns? I don't know. But Gaetz and Tulsi will be live on the program. And ladies and gentlemen, we have so much news. Also, Kamala Harris has announced that she will not be running for governor of California. Does that guarantee a 2028 run? Will she be running against Tulsi Gabbard in 2028? Tulsi Gabbard for VP? J.D. Vance for POTUS? Is that what you think? Let me know in the comment section. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. Let's lock and load. We have a golden show today. Stay gold with my friends at Advantage Gold, the man who helped shape the U.S. monetary policy. The former IMF chief economist, Kenneth Rogoff, has a brand new book. It's called The U.S. Dollar's Dominance is Under Attack. You can get that book for free when you contact Advantage Gold today. One-on-one precious metals appointment with Advantage Gold can help you discover why gold is becoming the #1 hedge against global currency shift, how to move your IRA or 401k into physical gold and silver tax or penalty free, and how to get up to $10,000 in free gold and silver with a qualifying account. So get your free copy today while supplies last. Text Benny to 85545, Benny to 85545, or go to AdvantageGold.com. That's AdvantageGold.com. Data and message rates apply. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we rock and roll. We have Tulsi Gabbard off the top joining us in just a few minutes. So I need to speed run all of the news. And there has been an enormous amount of news breaking at the very end of the show yesterday. was this bombshell report that we had to like rip through in order to get to the actual understanding of what they had found at the FBI. So here's what they found. They found a locked room, a locked skiff hidden in the bowels of the FBI. In that room, they had thousands of Russiagate documents that were in burn bags. Now, these are bags that, as far as I understand, are the kind of bags that are used in order to conceal evidence and potentially destroy evidence in order to make sure that evidence never gets out. Does it mean that they're going to physically set them on fire? Sure. Why not? We'll have Tulsi on. We'll ask, ladies and gentlemen. But now we've learned that there's also a Russiagate whistleblower. Let's go ahead and read a top line from the New York Post this morning. Trump Russiagate probe whistleblower pressured by Obama intel officials to sign off on 2016 election report. I need you to say you agree. Sounds like a threat. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released a whistleblower account on Wednesday detailing the pressure campaign that the Obama-era intelligence officials applied to a subordinate to get them to sign off on an assessment Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election. Man, these are good questions for Tulsi. We have the whole timeline. I want to ask her about the whole timeline with Obama, because that's the biggest smoking gun. I was pressured to alter my views, the senior intelligence analyst turned whistleblower claimed in the documents Gabbard used as evidence for her bombshell report earlier this month, detailing a treasonous conspiracy. Let's ask her about treason, too. Does treason mean that Hillary Clinton is guilty of treason? We're going to ask. Is Hillary Clinton guilty of treason for using Russian spy intelligence in order to spy on Donald Trump? In order to sabotage Donald Trump? Not just spy on him, but they did that as well. To subvert the President Trump's 2016 victory. Here she goes. The analyst who worked on a 2016 intelligence community assessment, which determined that foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks and election infrastructure after the U.S. presidential election outcome, recalled my concurrence and sought to enable redacted to sway the views of the Defense Intelligence Agency to sign off on the revised intelligence community assessment. The new 2017 intelligence community assessment relied on the discredited Steele dossier. We're going to ask. This is the biggest question. Is Hillary Clinton guilty of treason? She said that this is treasonous. We must ask. Steele dossier claimed that Kremlin orchestrated hackings of the Democrat National Committee and so on. There is a report that you are not allowed to see, and if you saw it, you would agree. The analyst recalled a supervisor telling them in early 2017, reviewing the alternative assessment. Isn't it possible that Putin has something on Trump to blackmail or coerce him, the supervisor continued? You need to trust me on this. Then the whistleblower refused to sign off on the new assessment. The visibly frustrated superior stated, you need to say you agree with these judgments or they will go after them, so that the DIA will go along with them, so that they can continue this hoax down the process. I remember this conversation very clearly, the whistleblower wrote in the account, as it is a difficult situation, and I listened, and I chose my response with care. I was aware that defying the National Intelligence Office direction to me misrepresented my views based on the conscious decision to adhere to the intelligence policy community standards in tradecraft and ethics. The DIA did not end up joining the CIA, FBI, and National Security Agency in the intelligence community assessment. The documents also showed the whistleblower made repeated attempts to report concerns about the information used, this would be the Steele dossier, to multiple government officials, including the Inspector General and the intelligence community, and to John Durham. Man, we got to ask about the Durham annex. Okay. So much to ask. We're like gathering our thoughts here. The whistleblower put their own well-being on the line to defend the Democratic Republic to ensure the American people learned the truth about how President Obama directed the creation of the intelligence community assessment, knowingly promoted falsehoods, claiming Russia had President Trump get elected in 2016, Gabbard said in a statement. Truth and accountability will ensure this doesn't happen again. What does accountability look like? What does it look like exactly? What does it look like? We got to figure this one out. Crazy stuff is happening. Burn bags, baby. No, this is wild. Okay, very quickly. Kash Patel on Joe Rogan saying, yo, you don't understand. We found everything. We found everything hidden inside of a locked room. And at the end of the stream yesterday, this massive story broke. It was the biggest story the entire day yesterday. Patel found thousands of sensitive documents inside of burn bags in secret room at the FBI. So Cash has been trying to tell us about this, and so is Bongino, actually. They both said that agents at the FBI pulled them aside and said, you got to come over and see this. You got to come over and see. Something very dark is going on. Here's Cash sort of previewing this on Rogan. This was 2 months ago.
Me, as the director of the FBI, the former Russiagate guy, when I first got to the Bureau, found a room that Comey and others hid from the world in the Hoover building, full of documents and computer hard drives that no one had ever seen or heard of. Locked the key and hid access and just said, no one's ever going to find this place.
What?
Yeah. So my guys are going through that right now.
What's in there?
A lot of stuff. I mean, that's the thing. People are like, well, okay, go arrest him. And I'm like, okay, well, how about you let me run a methodical investigation while I give over information?
So what the hell is this? Let's just read the top line here quickly. Before the Director of National Intelligence joins the show, FBI Director Cash Patel found the trove of sensitive documents related to the origins of the Trump-Russia probe buried in burn bags in a secret room in the Bureau. The source told Fox News Digital that the burn bag system is used to destroy documents designated as classified. Sources told Fox News Digital that multiple burn bags were found and filled with thousands of documents. Sources told Fox News that one of the documents contained the Durham annex, the final report that included the underlying intelligence being reviewed. The declassification of the classified annex is being done right now in close coordination with CIA Director Ratcliffe, Patel, Tulsi Gabbard. We have to ask about this. What were they trying to burn? The declassification annex will be transmitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chairman Grassley. Sources exclusively briefed Fox News on some of the contents of the classified annex, including that the U.S. intelligence community had credible foreign sources indicating that the FBI would play a role in spreading the alleged Trump-Russia collusion narrative before the Bureau ever launched its controversial Crossfire hurricane probe. Do you understand how massive that paragraph is right there? That paragraph, that is the key paragraph. That is the most important paragraph. That is the paragraph that proves treason. They knew they had Russian spy documentation. Christopher Steele was on the payroll of a sanctioned Russian oligarch. He was, by every weight and measure, a literal Russian asset. Hillary Clinton was using Russian assets, Russian spies, in order to write disinformation, malinformation about President Trump. Then they were laundering it, merchandising it through our intelligence agencies in order to kneecap Trump. It is the most evil and banal operation that you have ever seen from the deep state. It is worth 10,000 Watergates. It's worse than anything we've ever seen. The complicity and silence from the media on this is horrific. Operation Mockingbird, right? Yeah, got to think about it. Operation Mockingbird. Is that what's going on here? They parrot what they're told to parrot, and they shut up when they're told to shut up. Exactly what's going on. So this is the bombshell right here, ladies and gentlemen. It's massive. Okay, Greg Jarrett, very quickly. Last night, why would you use a burn bag? What would you use a burn bag for? Let's go.
Could be somebody who didn't want to be the party to a crime by burning them, because attempting to destroy or conceal evidence is the crime of obstruction of justice, Sean, if it's done to hide documents relevant to a criminal or congressional investigation or in anticipation of one. So these documents are not just relevant, they may be pivotal. So that's point number one on obstruction. Point number two is Senator Charles Grassley has been investigating the collusion hoax and those behind it for years, which is why these burn bag documents were turned over to him. So the question becomes, who ordered the planned burning? Why did they do it? Although the why to me seems readily self-evident. Whoever was involved was trying to conceal evidence that they didn't like, things that might implicate them. And it doesn't matter if the material was classified. You still cannot destroy it if it relates to an investigation. Go ahead.
One of the documents FBI officials allegedly found in the burn bag were the classified annex, or was the classified annex to former special counsel John Durham's final report, which includes the underlying intelligence that he reviewed. Why would that be so critical? To me, that's critical.
Because it likely reveals many of the government actors who instigated and corruptly spread the phony collusion narrative despite knowing it was totally untrue. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, there it is. That's the setup. That's where we are right now, and we await the bombshells. Joining us right now is the Director of National Intelligence, probably the bravest single woman to ever serve in federal office, Tulsi Gabbard, live with us. So much to talk about. Let's go. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Benny. It's great to see you.
I am a little bit disappointed that you didn't bring your Captain America shield. We have the shield right here for anybody who isn't familiar. Tulsi Gabbard, upon her confirmation to her office, received what I will only classify as a Captain America shield. Does that hang in your office?
No, it hangs somewhere in my building. I have yet to find it, honestly. They didn't let me take it away.
Okay. You got to sign it, all right. Well, it's a pretty cool shield.
Yes.
And I assume that the ascendancy into that building has been a wild ride, given the amount of work that you've been doing.
We've been working hard.
Yes.
We've been working hard to come in on day one and carry out the mandate that President Trump delivered, that the American people delivered to him, and to carry out on the commitments that I made when President Trump nominated me for this position, was to find the truth and tell the truth to the American people, and work very hard every day to make sure that the intelligence that we are providing to the president, to his cabinet, and to policymakers is not politicized, that it is unbiased, objective, relevant, and timely intelligence that can truly best inform those critical decisions that the president is faced with making on a daily basis in the interests of the American people and the safety, security, and freedom of our country.
Well, Director, it seems like you've begun a trend, because now with some of the disclosures and declassifications from your office, there are other offices who are making some pretty shocking announcements. Like, for instance, Director Patel made the announcement that they found thousands of Russiagate documents in a burn bag. This happened over the last 24 hours, locked in a secret SCIF hidden deep within the bowels of the FBI. So now you have other directors looking in their departments and finding this kind of shocking. I wonder your reaction to this news.
I wish I could say I was surprised by it, but when people hear the term deep state and you hear about things like this, these are the actions that have been and are being taken to try to hide the truth away from us, and really to hide the truth away from the American people. And really, this is why time is of the essence for us to be able to find these documents. And this is kind of a daily frustration, to be honest, because I think, from the outside looking in, people say, hey, why can't you as director just say, give me all of the documents on this topic from across the intelligence community? I wish it were that easy, and I do send those directives out. But you have examples just like the one Director Patel uncovered, where you have highly classified documents hidden away in a burn bag intended for destruction. Thankfully, somebody forgot to actually destroy those documents so that he was able to discover them. But there are a lot of different methods and tactics that, unfortunately, bad actors within the intelligence community use to try to hide the truth, because they're afraid that if the truth is revealed, either they or their friends or their benefactors will be exposed for doing some of the things that we exposed to the American people over the last couple of weeks, truly politicizing and weaponizing intelligence, knowingly creating false intelligence assessments in order to have a very specific outcome that, in the case of President Trump and the 2016 election, has the effect of undermining our democratic republic, and creating a fake intelligence assessment based on discredited information, pieces of very shoddy so-called intelligence that were not acceptable under the intelligence community's tradecraft standards, but they were used to create this fake intelligence assessment that was used as the foundation for everything that came after President Trump's election by the American people in 2016, launching essentially what was a years-long coup.
Director, could you elucidate for us who are not potentially familiar with what a burn bag is? Why would you keep documents in one? What is the intended purpose of a burn bag?
I have, for example, classified intelligence that comes across my desk every day. These are different intelligence reports that are being generated from across the intelligence community. Sometimes the best way to deal with these documents after I've read them, of course, I don't have the only copy, is to put them in a burn bag in order to make sure that they don't end up in the wrong hands, either intentionally or unintentionally. So I have a bag next to my desk that is a burn bag. This is common in many of the offices of those who work in the national security space or perhaps in the White House. But it's about securing intelligence and making sure that it goes to its intended recipient, not the janitor who comes in to empty the trash, for example. But for these highly classified documents to be placed in a burn bag within the FBI, where apparently they're, at least at this point, I'm not aware of other copies of those documents existing. This is where we have, to me, what appear to be signs of very clear malintent to try to cover up, again, bad actors within the intelligence community. And in this case, we're talking about at least one of the annexes to the Durham report that, once released, will reveal brand new information about the FBI's culpability under James Comey, as well as its connection to Hillary Clinton and her actions in the 2016 campaign.
Yes, the way that this has been framed for those who have been doing the best reporting on it, like John Solomon, for instance, is that this Durham annex will show that the Hillary Clinton campaign colluded with and networked with Russian spies through the Steele dossier in order to get Russian disinformation to be merchandised by our own intel agencies, to be whitewashed through the FBI, and that the FBI knew that they were doing this. They were complicit in it, and they were co-conspirators in this. But I, of course, haven't seen the documents, and very, very few people have, as they are highly classified. Could you preview what we're going to learn in this Durham annex?
I won't get into the details now. The document is still going through declassification process. It'll speak for itself once it's released to the public. But I think, again, many of the things that you're talking about won't sound like new information. But what documents like this do is actually provide the evidence of what led to the results that we know very commonly as the Steele dossier. Again, something that the FBI knew long before the 2016 election was a discredited document that was created from a political motivation to try to hurt Donald Trump in his candidacy. The fact that this document, the Steele dossier, was knowingly used as a quote unquote source in this January 2017 intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered then his DNI James Clapper to produce, along with then former CIA Director John Brennan, is astounding from anyone who's looking at this, even from outside the intelligence community. That you would have these people in charge of our national intelligence enterprise knowingly, willingly, and demanding that this Steele dossier be used as a credible source in this intelligence assessment, and then going and shopping around this intelligence assessment to Congress, to the American people, not only as an assessment, but stating, as John Brennan and James Clapper did, that this assessment, they had high confidence. They had high confidence in this assessment. And that's a technical term within the intelligence community. It's as close of a categorization of assessment that you could say with near certainty. Things are never certain until they are very real and have actually happened. So within the intelligence community, it's the highest bar that is very difficult to reach for any intelligence professional to make an assessment with high confidence. The CIA and the FBI singularly were the only two intelligence community elements that said that January 2017 assessment, the one Obama ordered that was knowingly filled with falsehoods. Brennan and Clapper shared that document and its assessment with high confidence. When we talk about accountability, these are the things that we are talking about. There were no accidents here. All of this was done intentionally and willfully, creating a false, an intelligence assessment filled with falsehoods, specifically to sell a lie to the American people, to delegitimize the 2016 election, to delegitimize President Trump and his administration, and use this document as the so-called evidence for everything that would come after, from congressional impeachments to years-long investigations to harassment, investigation and smears against the president and his family, senior officials, some having to serve time in jail. The list goes on. And this is where I think it's important, Benny, to just remind people about the seriousness of these implications and how it has to do not with Democrats or Republicans, but with every American, and our ability to have faith in the integrity of our elections, and that there will be a peaceful transition of power, peaceful transfer of power. Once the American people's voices are heard in an election, as they were in 2016 with President Trump, President Obama should have said, the people have spoken, we will prepare for this transition. That didn't happen in 2016. Instead, they were unhappy that President Trump got elected and began this process of creating a manufactured intelligence assessment filled with falsehoods, specifically to undermine and legitimize President Trump's presidency.
Director, you've called these actions treasonous. Stephen Miller has called them seditious conspiracy. If you lay out the fact pattern, specifically given the Durham annex and what we've heard reported is going to be in that, you'll find that Christopher Steele was working for sanctioned Russian oligarchs, that many of his sources were Russian spies. This is a document of foreign interference, and that is definitionally treason. They were using foreign agents in order to affect and undermine our election. It just isn't the narrative that Donald Trump was doing that. That's been pushed on us for years. It was the opposite, correct? It was actually Hillary Clinton and the establishment at the FBI using foreign intelligence in a treasonous act against our own government. Am I getting that correctly?
You are, yes. And the interesting thing here is, again, I want to point back to the documents we released, because people can go and read for themselves. Go to odni.gov. There you can click through. You can read the documents for themselves. This is not my view or my opinion or my interpretation. Go and read the documents yourself. Look at the emails that were sent from James Clapper's assistant out to the intelligence community, communicating that this assessment will be created per the president's direction. Read the documents for yourself. And then you can see, as you go through the documents, how in the months leading up to the election, the intelligence community consistently assessed that Russia had neither the intent nor the capability to be able to influence or swing the election for Donald Trump. And that's a critical statement there, because in the assessment that President Obama ordered, and you'll again see in the documents with great detail how he wanted an assessment that delivered intelligence that details how Moscow tried to help Trump get elected, not if, but how. And then DNI Clapper and CIA Director John Brennan delivered for President Obama through this manufactured intelligence assessment, again, based on discredited information and shoddy intelligence that was weaponized for a very specific political purpose.
You've mentioned multiple times that you have referred these documents for charging by the DOJ, and there's now a strike force looking into them. What do you expect those charges to be?
I'm going to leave that up to the lawyers. I am not a lawyer, but we have and will continue to give Attorney General Pam Bondi, their strike force team, Todd Blanche, and their team there at the Department of Justice, every single piece of evidence and documents that we find that continue to expose the truth to the American people about what really happened and who's responsible.
Something that I thought was very interesting as we were looking through the timeline of the documents is December 8th and 9th. that the President's Daily Brief being pulled and learning that the President's Daily Brief also went to Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump would have been given exculpatory evidence were that President's Daily Brief to have gone to his desk via General Flynn, that there was no Russian interference in the 2016 election. Do you believe that there was a political motivation to hold that back so that President Trump wouldn't see that rightful intel?
I have not yet uncovered evidence of that, but in my view, this is too coincidental to be a coincidence. That very clearly, when you look at all of the Russia rhetoric that came from Hillary Clinton throughout that campaign, if President Trump then, as President-elect Trump, had seen a President's Daily Brief, this is an article where the intelligence community views it as being a very highly esteemed product, that only the best of intelligence gets into this President's Daily Brief. If they had published that document, which said again that, I'm paraphrasing, that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to influence the election in favor of Donald Trump or either candidate, then President-elect Trump would have seen that and said, hey, see, this is what I knew all along, yet Hillary Clinton's been saying all of these things and making all of these allegations against President Trump and claiming foreign interference. For years, Hillary Clinton claimed that she would have won the election and been president if not for Russia. That was an inconvenient truth. The President's Daily Brief article was pulled. It has never been published until we released it about a week and a half ago. Instead, this new intelligence assessment was ordered by President Obama that contradicted directly every other intelligence assessment that had been published prior to the election, as well as assessments that had been pushed forward after the election, again, that said the exact opposite.
The timeline is absolutely remarkable. And then this article from the New York Times, the day that President Obama decided that this would be the narrative, they even run it with a photo of him. It's shameless. December 9th, stating that their sources are from the administration. And it's already the pre-baked narrative that Russia helped Trump, even though the intelligence community hadn't done their assessment yet.
That's right. Again, very
how's that possible, Director?
They got the message about what the narrative was supposed to be. They then reached out to their friends in the mainstream media to start to plant those seeds so that when this assessment came out, it would not be seen as something shocking or as contradictory as it obviously was to every other assessment that had been put out prior. And I think again, this is a good opportunity to point to why many of these mainstream media outlets have either been completely silent in the wake of these historic revelations, or they essentially are taking the approach, if they cover this story, they are trying to diminish it, say, hey, there's nothing to see here. This is a play on words, or, these are baseless accusations. They're even trotting out a woman, Susan Miller, who claims to have been the author of this 2017 January intelligence assessment. And she's claiming that everything that I've revealed and released to the public is all false, that we're the ones who are telling people lies. Well, I've checked in to Susan Miller, as well as checked in with some of the folks who were in the room when a lot of this was happening. And they have confirmed through multiple sources that Susan Miller was not the author of this intelligence community assessment. Once again, the mainstream media trotting out discredited individuals and reports, because if they actually report the truth, they would somehow have to admit their complicity in this, as you pointed out, from day one.
Yes, from even before the intelligence community assessment, they were running with the narrative that was decided on December 9th, the same day. The Washington Post and the New York Times, it's shameless when you go back and look at the timestamps.
Yes.
Shameless. Very quickly here, if you don't mind moving to one other topic, you made a comment at a cabinet secretary meeting that has stuck with our audience, and they'd really love an update on it. And it's about the 2020 election. And you were talking about the security of that election, and you were telling President Trump that there has been evidence that has been uncovered of potential breaches. I'm not exactly certain, but I'd love a follow-up on this. Here's the moment right here. And perhaps do you have any updates on the 2020 election or anything that you've found, Director?
The point that I was making there in the cabinet meeting was early discovery that I had seen from a whistleblower who came forward, who was working under CISA at that time, which is responsible for critical infrastructure and trying to protect against cyber vulnerabilities, critical infrastructure, including, of course, the integrity of our election systems. And what was interesting was seeing how this whistleblower brought forward information that CISA at that time, the federal government, was aware of vulnerabilities in our election machines, but they chose not to disclose that information to the American people or to the administration at that time. This is an area, of course, of critical importance, once again, for the American people to have faith in the integrity of our elections and that it is their voice that is heard through these elections. We're continuing to investigate this, and when we have information that we're ready to release, you'll hear about it.
Okay, so we're going to be hearing more on the 2020 election and some critical vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good. Our audience was thrilled when you released the JFK documents. It's the gold standard of declassification. I don't think you get enough credit for it, but you followed through on President Trump's mandate. There were some alarming things revealed there, but I wanted to touch just ever so briefly on this, the CIA bumping into Lee Harvey Oswald before he shot JFK, as the official narrative goes. Your commentary on this, it's something the CIA has tried to keep secret for 60 years, and now it's out thanks to your office and your declassification efforts. Remarkable.
Yeah, well, thanks, Benny. I really give all the credit to President Trump, because he came in and issued these executive orders. I think it was within the first week of coming into office that mandated that everything that the intelligence community has on the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, of Robert F. Kennedy, and of Martin Luther King, Dr. King, must be released to the American people. Now, in each of these cases, some documents had been released previously, either by, in JFK's case, congressional mandates, but they were highly redacted in many cases. And then in the case of Senator Kennedy and Dr. King, many of those files had never been released before and were literally sitting in boxes in storage. And so sending out hunting teams to go and find these documents, looking in places that people hadn't looked before, really provided us the opportunity to deliver on President Trump's promise to the American people, for them to see and learn about each of these three cases, incredibly historic and tragic events in our nation's history, once again, to bring transparency and truth. And I'll tell you what, there are some folks within these intelligence agencies who fought very hard to keep many of these redactions in place. And it was President Trump. I was traveling overseas at the time, attending a security conference, and he called me in what was the middle of the night. I don't remember where I was exactly, but he specifically said, do not redact anything. Don't listen to anyone else who tells you otherwise. So President Trump really gets all of the credit here, because he made a promise to the American people. He has delivered on that promise. And I'm grateful to be able to do this work once again, to be able to give the American people what they deserve. And this is something I share with people who work in my organization, is the constant reminder is we work for the American people. That means what we do belongs to them. There are national security considerations, of course. Not everything can be declassified, but we work very hard every day to be able to make sure wherever we can share the truth with the American people, so they can draw their own assessments and draw their own opinions based on what we're sharing.
One final very quick follow-up to that point and to one you made earlier about the media being used as a propaganda mechanism. We saw it flatly. I mean, I think it's the smoking gun, quite frankly. of the Obamagate narrative and the Russiagate narrative, that it was so baked in that the New York Times and Washington Post went and ran with it. Some would say that that's part of Operation Mockingbird. Some would say that that's part of what we learned in the Church Committee, that the intel agencies were using media outlets as their mouthpieces, and that those mouthpieces would parrot the official narrative. And I wanted to ask you, is this operation still going on? Are you aware of the intel agencies working directly with media outlets in order to push prescribed narratives that may or may not be true?
It's something that we've already had to deal with, Benny, within this administration, where there are people within the intelligence community who believe that their will is more important than the will of the American people, and will weaponize intelligence by leaking it to their friends within the mainstream media with the intent of undermining President Trump's agenda. It is not one that he hasn't already talked about in every rally and town hall that he did throughout the campaign. I don't even know how many there were, but President Trump is enacting the very thing he promised the American people he would do in this election. So people in the intelligence community, they may agree, they may disagree. That's not the point here. As intelligence professionals, as people who work in the national security space, in the intelligence community, they are required to fulfill their mandate to their oath to the Constitution of the United States and to the President of the United States, who is duly elected by the American people. Those who leak intelligence to their friends in the mainstream media with the intent of undermining the president who was elected by the American people, none of these intelligence professionals were. They are subverting the will of the people and therefore undermining the Constitution.
It's wild that you're still having to deal with that. Call it what you will. But Operation Mockingbird, just incredible that they were just out with it, that they were using the media as government organs to push propaganda, and it's still happening today.
This is why what we're doing is so important, Benny,
Yes.
and this is why President Trump's mandate in this is really critical, is by exposing the truth, by exposing the bad actors within the intelligence community and in the political space who are weaponizing intelligence to advance their own political interests, is so important to be able to turn the light on in places that have been dark for far too long, expose the truth, and drive accountability. That's the only way that we can actually shift this and begin the work to try to restore trust in the intelligence community.
Yes. Anybody who's in a healthy, functional relationship knows that you have to trust the other person first. And so when your office trusts the American people with this information, that's how you actually restore it. And there was much to be restored, and you're doing just God's work, truly. Everybody must follow Tulsi. You most likely already do. But 750,000 people do right here. DNI Tulsi Gabbard, with a cool photo of her inside of a Apache right there. And Godspeed. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of our audience for attempting to restore that trust and being, frankly, the gold standard in the Trump administration for delivering.
Thanks for all that you do and all that you are focused on a daily basis to help emphasize the truth and help with the messaging that is focused on the most important things, which is our country and the American people and our Constitution.
Salt and light. Salt and
That's
light. The truth. Thank you, Director.
Thanks, Benny. Good to see you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tulsi Gabbard there saying that Hillary Clinton is treasonous. That is bombshell stuff. That Hillary Clinton committed treason and that she used foreign information in order to rig an election against President Trump. The American people must have prosecutions and arrests over this. That is a massive, massive admission by the Director of National Intelligence, saying that Operation Mockingbird is still ongoing inside of the CIA and intel community This is huge. Describing the Steele dossier as Russian disinformation cobbled together by people who are on the payroll of Russian oligarchs and Russian spies, asserting that it was indeed Hillary Clinton using the Russians to rig the 2016 election, not President Trump, the exact opposite of what you have been told. These are monster revelations, ladies and gentlemen. This is enormous. And then the descriptions of the burn bags. What the hell were they doing exactly? I guess we have to wait for the FBI to tell us, but like, what the hell was all that stuff doing sitting there? She described how to use a burn bag. What the hell is that? And then she teased this from the CIA. Here we go. Happening live right now. What a day. What a freaking day. Live from the CIA, time-stamped a second ago. CIA and DOJ's declassification of the Durham report appendix, along with the DNI's efforts, further advances President Trump's directive for maximum transparency as fulfills Senator Grassley's requests for disclosures. We've been teasing this for days now. We've been telling you this is about to happen. And ladies and gentlemen, it just happened. Let's click. Let's look through it. Goodness gracious. Here we go. My producers are ravenously eating this. This is all happening live right now. They've got Chuck Grassley on Fox News live right now. Chuck Grassley on Fox News live right now talking about this. So we'll get you those clips. It's all happening, and it's all happening right here on the show. It's wild. We have the Director of National Intelligence on the show. We'll have Matt Gaetz on the show. He knows so much about this. Let's go ahead and read some of the top lines here. Authentic July 2016 emails discussing Hillary Clinton's plans to demonize Putin and Trump. Predictions that the FBI will put more oil onto the fire. Hillary Clinton approved the idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering the U.S. elections. Exactly what we just talked about. Exactly. There it is in black and white. Technofog tweet. Predictions that the FBI will put more oil on the fire. Hillary Clinton approved the idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering the U.S. elections. From Durham's classified appendix. Exactly what we just discussed. Breaking at this second. They just dropped the mother load. Chuck Grassley is on Fox. He just wrapped. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, there's too much breaking news happening right now. Okay, well, we gotta go to it. My producers are telling me we have it now. Okay, here we go. At time of show, this is breaking. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Grassley on Fox talking about the Durham annex that has just been released. Here we go.
I want to get to some breaking news right now in this Russia matter that started 10 years ago in Washington, D.C. At the moment, newly declassified documents have been made public. These are from the Durham report. How much additional light will be learned about the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation is something we are trying to find out. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley is here. He chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. And Senator, thank you for your time today. Want to know what you learned? I just want our audience to know that apparently, based on my reading of it, these documents were stored in an annex. I don't know where that is or who oversees it. And they were being kept in burn bags, which I assume is material that's set to be incinerated. What's the truth? What's happening? What did you see in the documents?
Well, you see, you're bringing attention to the burn bag to me for the first time, and I'll leave that up to the FBI to describe, but I think it's evidence of the great depth that the deep state will go to cover up weaponization that was going on in the FBI and the executive branch of government generally under the Obama administration. And I want to thank Kash Patel of the FBI and Pan Bondi, our Attorney General, for releasing these documents, because after 8 years, and it took us 3 years to get this information, but after 8 years, I think we need maximum transparency on all the schemes that were going on 10 years ago to either stop Trump from being elected or after he was elected to ruin his presidency. And that's what this Durham report is all about. and it gives information that Comey FBI had 8-10 years ago that they never followed up on, and it actually brings attention to the fact that there was either a Clinton conspiracy to make this happen, or a Russian disinformation. But either way, it was an attempt to stop Trump, and it also proves that the FBI had a hand in it. And now, after these 8 years, 3 years of my trying to get the document, we know that there was the Steele dossier paid for by the Democrats and the Clinton campaign, that it was all effort of total distraction, and to make it look like Russia was playing a very major role in helping Trump to be elected. And now we know none of that was true. And now with this Durham report annex out, it finally proves that the FBI was covering up.
Wow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you're just going to have to forgive us because we just happen to have the perfect show booked with Tulsi Gabbard, Matt Gaetz, and now that happening on Fox seconds ago. The Durham report is out. I will admit to you, because it's happening live on the show, we haven't read through everything. I'm just going to read to you very quickly the top line here, and we'll jump to Matt Gaetz. CIA Director John Ratcliffe and Attorney General Pam Bondi declassified Durham appendix right now. Happened seconds ago. CIA Director John Ratcliffe. Today, the Department of Justice sent the declassification of the appendix to Durham report to Senate Judiciary Committee. Following coordination with the CIA, the action advances Donald Trump's directive. The latest declassification follows the DOJ's recent disclosure of information related to the FBI's handling of the investigation Hillary Clinton used to private email server handling classified information. Goodness gracious. Following the transmission of the new Durham documents, Attorney General Pam Bondi, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, FBI Director Jack Posobiec released the following statement. So this is the joint statement. Here we go. CIA and the Department of Justice are taking bold steps forward, declassifying underlying intelligence of the Durham appendix, showing false Trump-Russia collusion narrative is what it was, a coordinated plan to prevent and destroy Donald Trump's presidency. CIA stands with the department and is committed to transparency and rebuilding the intelligence community. The American people deserve the opportunity to see this. Then we have iterations of that in Patel and Pam Bondi quotes. One notable thing, a George Soros mention in the document. Can I get that? Yeah. What is the framing of that? Again, this is all happening live right now. What is the framing of that, producers? So there's a George Soros mention in all of this. How so? Yeah, okay. So we have a Soros Foundation mention, Open Society Foundation, between Democratic National Committee Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz and two individuals in the Open Society Foundation and the Soros Foundation. Jeffrey Goldstein, according to public sources, senior policy advisor. Okay, we're going to have to dig through all this. Better to do it with Matt Gaetz, ladies and gentlemen, who's joining our show live right now. Let's rock and roll. Wow, what a wild time to be live. Let's go. Oh, Matt, what's up? Sometimes you just like book them right. Goodness gracious. So Tulsi was just on, and then they dropped the Durham report, the Durham annex. You know the scandal better than virtually anyone alive because you were in Congress fighting against it day and night. And one of the
just say it, Benny. Just say it. I peaked during the Russia hoax. Okay?
You did. You called these bastards out to their face.
The Russia hoax, and now it's back in the news. But could we just take a moment and reflect on the fact that, like, John Durham wrote this whole report, came and testified before Congress, and apparently all of the bangers were in an appendix that we had to win an election and then get control of the FBI and CIA in order to read? Like, in what? If Donald Trump had not won this election, you would never even have seen this stuff. And we endured years of the media saying I was Vladimir Putin's lawyer, Trump was Vladimir Putin's agent, that there were these tapes and this compromising material, and the whole thing was cooked up by the Clinton campaign, and it didn't work. And then after it didn't work, when they were trying to manipulate the media and convince us all that, like, you know, we would be raising the Russian flag over the White House if Donald Trump won, after it didn't work, Obama himself ordered a hit on the Republic. on American democracy when on December 9th of 2016, he got everybody together and he said, look, go back, redo these assessments. And he gave the message to Clapper and Brennan that they were to create this predicate and that Comey would then be the inside man still in the Trump administration to pull the levers of government to try to destabilize this presidency. And somehow, through all of this, Donald Trump got his tax cuts, preserved peace in the world, backed down Kim in North Korea, and gave us some of the greatest prosperity any of us have known in our lives up to the COVID deal. And so it's quite a moment, but it also shows like how dogged you have to be to get this stuff. Is no one outraged over the fact that John Durham gave hours of public testimony and we're just getting this stuff now?
Yeah, but like, can you please elucidate for us? I'm sure you haven't had the opportunity to read these thousands of documents that just broke seconds ago. But do you have any top line information that you've learned?
Other members and staff have seen this stuff, before today. And the core of it is that the beginning of the Russia hoax was not George Papadopoulos in some London bar. It wasn't some belief that there were secret Trump, Putin channels of communications through Eric Prince in the Seychelles, that the whole thing was, in fact, cooked up and sold to donors such as Soros and the Open Society Foundation as a political mechanism, just like if you and I were involved in a campaign, we would say, okay, well, we're really going to attack this candidate based on their views on energy, right? And we would develop memos about that, and we would go talk to reporters about what we thought about that candidate's views on energy, right? But here, they went to the Russia thing, I guess because that was easier than campaigning in the Great Lakes Stakes and going to Wisconsin. I mean, it's so crazy to think about. But they did that here, and then they injected it into the intelligence community with the help of some of these pseudo political operatives and high-ranking officials at DOJ, CIA, and FBI. So that's what you're going to see: the correspondence that ran on the rails of communication, the pitch to financiers. Because remember, the original guy who walked this into the FBI was John McCain. This was a deal that some Rubio donor had cooked up, and then McCain walks it in, and it's kind of dismissed. And then the DNC picks it up because they say, whoa, this is something we can really pour the gas on and get to be a central focus of the campaign. Turns out people just wanted closed borders and an economy that worked.
So tell me, I just went to community college, Matt, so help me through this. We've heard for a decade now that President Trump paid the Russians to help him win and rig the election in 2016. Am I just understanding this as a simpleton? It was the exact opposite, that Hillary Clinton was using Russian disinformation. These are Russian spies. Christopher Steele's sanctioned by working for and being paid by a sanctioned Russian oligarch. All of this disinformation about President Trump came literally from Russia. And that was Hillary Clinton's campaign that was merchandising it, and the FBI that was then laundering it to the CIA and to the press and the media. So it was actually them working with the Russians in order to attack Trump.
That's right. That's exactly right. The media and the FBI were white labeling Russian dirt that was being assembled by foreign spies who hated Trump, paid for by the DNC. That is what happened. And
how is that not treasonous?
Those things, they called us crazy. They said, how dare we question the integrity or the viewpoint of how Robert Mueller is looking at this investigation. We had Republicans saying that. We had Trey Gowdy and the like saying, just let Mueller do his job and this will all be great. Where was Mueller investigating the Russians that were assembling the Steele dossier? That's my question. I mean, if Mueller was supposed to investigate the Russian interference in the election, what you just learned from this annex is that it was the Democrats and it was the elements of our own government at President Obama's direction that were white labeling Russian dirt in order to try to sway voters. And then after voters would not be swayed, to literally try to sway a presidency. They prosecuted Trump for taking home some documents. Barack Obama tried to take home the whole presidency. I think there has to be accountability for this. Here's the real strategy question going forward, though, Benny. This is all documents, right? And evidence takes two forms, documents and witnesses. How good are the witnesses? Can they withstand cross-examination? Would you put them before the House Judiciary Committee and Jamie Raskin? Would you put them on the stand if you wouldn't be willing to subject them to rigorous review? How do they come across? How do they look? These are all things that I think Jamie Comer knows. They're things that the Justice Department and the DNI probably know. We'll all find out how good those witnesses are, I think, in the coming weeks and months.
So now if you have these documents and you mentioned the Soros Foundation, so you're saying that the Soros Foundation, and forgive me, Matt, we're just reading them live on air here. You have a spectacular live show as well on One American News, but we're reading them live on air. Am I to understand that this is implicating the Soros Foundation in assistance in paying for all this? Because it was very expensive to do this operation. It cost millions of dollars in order to run this operation through Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, and so on. I mean, is there going to be legal culpability potentially for George Soros here?
The challenge with that is so much of this money is like disaggregated, fungible. And so what happens in politics is that when people feel like they've got a really compelling pitch to donors, that there's a great ad that will really cut through if we only had another $1 million to put it on TV, or there's this great candidate, and if we just gave them the right funding, they would secure this important position of power. And in this case, what appears to have happened is that the Debbie Wasserman Schultz DNC apparatus was trying to seduce the Soros operation into really funding a lot of the information operation around this. And whether or not you could tie those specific funds then into those ops, I don't see that in the docs yet. Still a lot to review. But I think the solicitation of the Soros Foundation to do this shows like that's not how you run a counter intel op. That's not how you run a criminal investigation. That's how you run a political smear campaign, and showcasing that tradecraft, I think, further indicts the Brennan viewpoint that all of this needed to be included in the official work product of our government.
Well, it should be enough for a subpoena, right? Like that, having the name dropped in there and having
Would you put Brennan there? Hey, by the way, here's a fair question. How come John Brennan never had to testify in public about this stuff? I asked him questions behind closed doors, but I begged our leadership, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, no more of these behind closed doors depots. Let's drag these guys in front of the country and ask them the questions that are on the minds of regular folks. And all I could get was the behind closed door deposition. That may turn out to be one of the predicate criminal acts in the conspiracy, Brennan's perjury to my questions about his involvement in the Steele dossier. Wow. But I think it's a fair question for Republicans to ask. We've got this majority. Why don't we take it out for a spin?
So wait a second. You're telling me that Republican leadership kneecapped you back when this was all rolling, when I assume would it be Paul Ryan in charge of the House?
No. I mean, these were decisions that were made, during the current ruling regime of the Republican structure. And here's what I was told when I said, look, Benny, the investigation was about the 51 intelligence officials that signed the letter that said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. And so we interviewed a lot of those people in private, and they said some very interesting things, and we released the transcripts. But that's nothing like having to have people answer live questions, Republicans and Democrats from both sides. And what I was told is that we would look potentially mean and retaliatory to be going after people for their political conduct.
This is Smash Mouth.
What I was told.
Matt, we're fighting communists, dude. Like, this is Smash Mouth. Like, what is going on?
Well, by the way, how are we supposed to win a war against these people when they're using the imprimatur of their security clearance and their government role to go and tell lies about Hunter Biden's laptop and Donald Trump? And when we ask them tough questions, we look like the mean guys, and so we're not going to do it. I was very opposed to that decision that was made. I voiced that viewpoint, and so I did the best I could. I showed up to all the behind closed doors depots. I did so when most of the members didn't. And I did what I could to ask the questions that would be on the minds of your viewers.
Would you mind elucidating for us where you think there was a perjury trap for Brennan, what you've gotten? And forgive us, sometimes, you guys release these transcripts. You release transcripts that are like 7,000 pages long. It's like so hard to get through.
Yeah, so here's the gist of it. I was like, look, man, how come you got all these people together to say that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? What was your basis to say it was Russian disinformation? He said, my entire career of making decisions about Russia and their intelligence operations. I was like, oh, well, good. I've got one I'd like to ask you about, the Steele dossier, since you're such an expert in all things Russia. And his lawyers went nuts and said, well, we're not here to talk about Steele. We're here to talk about Hunter Biden. And I said, well, tough. You opened the door for it. And so since they opened the door, I proceeded on a line of questioning wherein Brennan said, I had nothing to do with any analysis of the Steele dossier. That was all the FBI. CIA had no role in this. No, we made no decision about its inclusion. And now you got, like, if you throw a rock at CIA at Langley, so it hits somebody who says that they thought the Steele dossier was trash, should not be included. And it was Brennan himself who overruled good people at the CIA who said this stuff was nonsense. So that is where he committed a predicate criminal act in furtherance of a broader conspiracy. And the tell from the Department of Justice that they're doing this the right way is they're not just pursuing these as individual criminal acts, because if you do that, you have to bring that case in Washington, D.C., where the jury system is like a leftist Ouija board. So if you have a conspiracy and any of these cats took a text message in Palm Beach, did a phone call when they were on a ski vacation in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, if they were sending an email from Virginia, then we're going to have the opportunity to venue a prosecution of the whole conspiracy, where you may find any one predicate criminal act.
Such a critical question. We asked General Flynn this, and he was like, I'm really worried about getting out of, you have to get out of DC. You have to get out of the vectors of their control. And you have to get out of those jury pools. Okay, that's perfect. So, okay, when we're looking at this, how would you charge it, Matt? I mean, given the fact that they've lied to your face, one, I want to use this as a platform to bang my fist. Must Republicans bring these individuals forward to Congress to testify now? Like, is now the moment? Well, must it happen, or is that
look, we haven't seen these witnesses, Benny. We haven't seen them. And so there are certain people who are telling the truth, but just don't make good witnesses. That is the nature of performance art. And so only, the people behind the curtain right now know how good the witnesses are. And we're going to see the decision they make about how to utilize that evidence.
Okay. So, well, how would you charge it? Would you charge it as a criminal conspiracy against rights? That's what Mike Davis told us.
Yeah, I think that would be an element. I mean, look at what they charged everybody in January 6th over.
Seditious conspiracy.
Right? I mean,
seditious conspiracy. Yeah.
I think that what Obama did on December 9th, 2016 looks a lot more like seditious conspiracy to me than anything I saw on January 6th, 2021.
Great line. Okay, really quickly here, because you're one of the only people that would ever answer this question. None of these documents, I mean, including this document right here, this one's wild. This is Hillary Clinton approved the idea. This is straight from the Durham annex. Perhaps you've seen it, Matt, because you had a clearance, but I haven't. Okay, Hillary, my team is highlighting this as we're going live. Hillary Clinton approved the idea of Trump and Russia hackers hampering the U.S. elections and also distracting from her email attempts, also hacking the DNC. So the DNC hack, there's been zero evidence that the DNC hack came from the outside. An enormous amount of evidence that the DNC hack came from the inside. All of the emails, the Podesta emails, the satanic spirit cooking dinner stuff, Maria Abramovich, all this Hillary stuff, all that sick stuff, all of it came from the inside. And we haven't been able to get a straight answer on this, but all of these documents seem to point to that was part of the conspiracy, that the Russians hacked the DNC too. Your thoughts on this, Matt?
Yeah, and those can be predicate criminal acts, right? If they are lying to donors, like, remember what they got Santos on, all these wire fraud things about the use of money and what promises were made to donors. So you could maybe access some of those wire fraud statutes based on how the money moved to fund some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, what that is showing you is they had to run the political op by the candidate, right? And so Hillary Clinton's participation in the decision to pursue this narrative only mires in scandal all the people inside the government who are willing to go along with it.
All right, Matt, I know we're up against a hard out. Just one final question here. what do you expect? Can you give us a honest man's opinion, having seen the inside of this machine and knowing so very closely the Trump team and the president himself? What's going to happen? Like, prepare our audience, right? Like, what's going to happen?
Right. So if you're Clapper or Brennan or Comey or Obama, every time the phone rings, every time there's a knock at the door, every time you hear the leaves rustle on your stoop, you're wondering whether or not it's somebody serving you a subpoena or giving you notice of service that you're going to have to provide documents and potentially testimony to a grand jury. Decisions will have to be made by some really smart prosecutors like Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche about who to flip, who to give immunity to, that will be the narrator of this great conspiracy. Whenever you have a major conspiracy trial, you have to have a great narrator. And who's that going to be? Who maybe wants the opportunity to participate in the proceedings in that way? That's the next thing coming. The subpoenas, and then who flips.
And one more time, I'm not a betting man, but please handicap for us, Matt. Do you expect people will go to prison for this?
Well, look, I think that it's always difficult to get in front of the prosecutors who have to make some of these charging decisions, but a lot of that's going to come down to venue. I don't know whether or not some of these things happened outside of DC in jurisdictions where you can get a fair shake. We already had Andrew McCabe strung up, ready to go on lying to Congress, and there wasn't a grand jury that would even indict him in Washington, D.C. because of the nature of that deeply corrupt place. So I think that the venue question is what that will turn on.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll take mugshots for right now. You know, I'll start with the low-hanging fruit, man. I'll take the mugshots.
Just nice to, hey, by the way, just nice to get the Durham annex here in 2025. Thank goodness. I wonder what annexes we're going to be getting in 2035, Benny. Maybe that's when we'll get. Maybe that's when we'll get the Benny Johnson Tim Pool annex. We'll wait till 2035.
That's right. I've been asking. What a filthy, dirty op, man. What a filthy, dirty op. I'm telling you, that thing stinks to high heavens. And the fact that they were sprinting to wrap it all up. FBI calling me. You're the victim of a crime. Okay. Yeah. All right. We're going to learn in 2035 that Benny Johnson actually is Vladimir Putin. You just didn't know it the whole time. And we're going to learn today that Matt Gaetz is Neo from the Matrix, according to his cover image here on X. That is amazing. I think it's just Neo, dude. It's just Neo.
Sakat Prison, magical place. I got to run.
See you, Matt. Thank you, man. Everyone follow Matt Gaetz, obviously. Yep. All right. Rocking and rolling. Sometimes you just book them right. Sometimes you just hitting homers. You're just hitting dingers. Ding, ding, ding. Goodness gracious. Tulsi Gabbard setting it all up for us. Matt Gaetz then knocking it out of the park as we read the Durham Annex live on air. And next is going to be Poso. Whoo, baby. We're cooking today. You should be cooking in the golden era. Make sure that you're out from under your debt. American financing can ensure that future for you. There are rising costs throughout our nation. There's a lot of people in debt, and it sucks. You don't want to be in those 20, 30%. Listen, man, that's just usury, and as far as I'm concerned. But nonetheless, it's happening right now, and you need to get out from under it. Make sure that you are debt-free. American financing can lock in using the equity in your home in order to pay off any credit card debt and get you into financial freedom today. Their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. It's like a $10,000 raise per year. There's no upfront fees, no pressure. And it costs you absolutely nothing. You could save every single month. Start today. Call American Financing at 888-528-1219. That's 888-528-1219. So I got, there are some wild revelations in all of this. Just off the top of the dome. Here we go. Julie. So who is Julie? Can you pop that up? Julie says that it will be a long-term affair to demonize Trump and Putin. Look at that. They're right. That's in their writing. Okay. Who is Julie? Julie says. Okay. So Julie is sitting here saying that Hillary Clinton approved the idea of Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections. That should distract people from her own missing email, especially if the affair goes to the Olympic level. Goodness, read this. The point is making the Russians play a U.S. domestic issue. Say something like critical infrastructure threat for the. Read it. You can you read it like it reads out of a plot out of a Pixar movie, Despicable Me. Like it reads like a plot. It's like a villain plot. They've laid it all out. Say something like critical infrastructure threat to the election feels like a menace. Both POTUS and the vice president have acknowledged the fact that the intel community would speed up the searching for evidence. This is wild. They're breaking it all down. It's totally treasonous. This is the smoking gun. Okay, let's go ahead and look at John Solomon, then we're going to jump over to POSA. This is the smoking gun evidence. This is John Solomon's reporting, who's been doing just excellent on this and actually framed it all up very beautifully for us on Fox just a night ago. The smoking gun evidence, the Durham annex, if it is authenticated by further investigation, it means that liberal megadonor George Soros' team knew the whole Clinton plan for Russiagate hoax 4 days before the FBI opened up the probe. So did Obama, Brennan, and Comey. So George Soros was presumably funding it. Is that true? Holy moly. What a world. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome Jack Posobiec, somebody who's done better reporting on all of this than maybe any man alive, somebody who's been covering it for, I think it's fair to say, a decade now, who called it out from its inception. And he joins us with a bit of a victory dance today. Jack, welcome back to the program. We've been live when all of this broke. In fact, it broke with Tulsi Gabbard just leaving our airwaves. And so we wanted to just get your top line on this Durham annex. Have you been able to review it? And what do you see inside of these documents?
Yeah, Benny, so the top line is this, and I've been able, just in the few minutes that I've been sort of watching the program and scrolling through as fast as I can, the top line is this. This is a litany of criminal acts. These are criminal acts. And I've said for over a year at this point that if we do not do anything about this now, if we do not respond with indictments, if we do not respond with grand juries, if we do not respond with prosecutions, they will do this again. They will do this again the next time, whether it's a J.D. Vance or a Tulsi, whoever it is that runs again on the Republican side, this will all happen again if there is not a response. So period, full stop. And yes, I've been through quite a number of this. This actually confirms a lot of the reporting that's in there. What's very interesting, there's some cracks that appear to be relevant that are now coming to the fore, things that we've seen in the past that are now really illuminated because of this release. But Benny, when you put all this together, this is a litany of criminal acts, and we don't exactly have the right nomenclature for it yet because these types of things haven't occurred before in American history. But really, seditious conspiracy, I think, is the only thing you can call it. Because, look, people need to remember, the way it was supposed to work is this. Hillary Clinton was, quote unquote, supposed to win the election. This was never meant to hold up to any type of scrutiny whatsoever. She was supposed to win. She was going to get into office. This was just an election, dirty trick. This was a dirty trick. It was meant to be the October surprise, and it worked basically like this. Hillary Clinton sitting in a room saying, and remember, go back, put yourself back in the context. The FBI had Hillary under investigation for all of 2016 because of her use of the email server. This was a recurring narrative all throughout 2016. And those emails, by the way, have never been publicly released in full. Julian Assange never released them. Russia, who may have had, and we're seeing a lot of indications that Russia did have access to these emails, they did not release them. So the Hillary Clinton emails have never been released. John Podesta's have been released. The DNC emails have been released. But I need to keep hampering on this because it gets lost in the mix, and we need to be clear. Those emails were never released. So she's sitting in a room saying, they've got me under investigation. I want to put him under investigation. That's the genesis of all of this. And so this becomes the reason, it becomes Russia. It was never meant to hold up to any scrutiny. And then in the waning hours, we see this election dirty trick is then meant to be injected into a poison pill to try to remove Trump from office, to create essentially a nullification project of his first administration by generating, which of course led to an impeachment and the Mueller investigation, which of course, even though the impeachment had nothing to do with this predicate information. But, you know, scroll back all the way. They did this because they always thought they could get away with it. They did this because they never thought that there would be a response. They thought that they had, hey, we have control of the media. We have control of all of the intelligence agencies. By the way, I'm one of the only guys out there who can say I was serving in the intelligence community in 2016. So in just in a very limited capacity, I wasn't on any of this stuff, but I had access to the classified ICA when it came out. It made no sense. I read the entire thing when it came out. It made no sense whatsoever. I've never seen something like that. They were making because it's really as simple as this. I've never seen the intelligence community create a product that interfered in domestic politics. It's just not what we do, right? We talk about China, we talk about Russia, we talk about North Korea, we talk about Iran, certainly we talk about terrorist organizations, and thank God Joe Kent is now running NCTC over there. But we don't get involved. We're not supposed to. We're actually limited by law from getting involved in domestic politics. But if you're able to claim that somehow domestic politics are being interfered with by a foreign power, a hostile foreign power, like say, I don't know, Russia, and let's say you want to start a proxy war with Russia because you're trying to gin up hostilities with Russia, then what would you do? Well, you would blame that Russia hacked the election, that Russia stole the election, and you would try to create a wellspring of support for a war with Russia, a proxy war with Russia, which was supposed to begin in the Hillary Clinton administration. What did we see? It began under the Joe Biden administration. The plan was in place all along, but Donald J. Trump came down the escalator and screwed everything up. So zoom back in a little bit. When you put all this together, the Durham annex, the 19-page, and everyone needs to go and read the 19-page whistleblower disclosure that was released by the DNI this week. You've got chapter and verse of senior-level intelligence officials, nonpartisan, apolitical intelligence professionals saying from the start, what you're doing makes no sense. I can't sign off on this. I don't see any evidence of what you're talking about, that Russia interfered or hacked in any way other than, probing systems. And by the way, we have evidence of lots of countries probing our systems. They do it all the time. And in fact, we do it to them. It's called cyber operations. It's something that goes on constantly in cyber warfare. And yet they excluded all the information of other countries doing this, China, Iran, North Korea, et cetera. And this goes all the way back to 2016. So you've got people being forced to sign off on these documents from the highest levels. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like this. So you've tied that to this annex that comes out, the perjury that goes on and on and on throughout the last 10 years or so, and the fact that we've been told, and remember, we were already told, there was that leak, I think it was to ABC, that criminal investigations have been opened on Comey and on Brennan. And I am told that there is already a plan in place to make sure that this investigation centers on things that are elements of the conspiracy that occurred outside of Washington, D.C. And that the DOJ is well aware of the issue. And this is something that I've been raising over and over on Twitter, on my show, Human Events, that, hey, if we bring this in D.C., because I sat through all of those trials for Stephen K. Bannon, for Roger Stone, for General Flynn when he was in for his hearings. No D.C. jury is going to convict anyone with a D next to their name, and they'll convict everyone with an R next to their name. Remember, I think there was a 100% conviction rate for every single Jan 6 trial that went up. 100% conviction rate. And so they know full well what the cards are here to play. So if we're breaking any news, let's break that they understand very well that the elements of this conspiracy that took place outside of Washington, D.C. allow them to impanel members and investigations also outside of D.C.
So all that is fascinating, Jack. I want to just note for your team, your microphone audio is low. I want to continue doing the interview. I don't know if you can signal to your team to bump your audio up, but I just want to say that your mic audio is low. We can still hear you, but it is We've been trying to contact them. Nonetheless, I want to hear what you have to say, and either way, the audience is locked in. So exactly what would you charge here? Mike Davis has been on talking about a conspiracy against rights. Tulsi Gabbard was just on the program talking about treasonous conspiracy, and Matt Gaetz is on talking seditious conspiracy. Say hit him with the J6 charges, which I think would be just delicious. How would you carve up this whale? Because we're getting all this information, but it needs to like meet at a nexus point. Yep. And now we've lost. So we're going to bump off Jack, work with the producers, bump off Jack. We're going to work with the producers. Now, Jack, we've lost your audio entirely. We're sorry. Yeah. It is what it is. Okay. So there was a ghost in the machine. It happens every single time that we're doing a Bombshell live show. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we move along. As we get Jack fixed, we'll get Jack right back. What is the way to ensure that your connection is never lost? Use Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is the device that we use as the backbone of our show. It keeps us connected on the road. We're going to be traveling a lot next week, doing a lot of very interesting things. Of course, you know that Patriot Mobile, as we talk about virtually every single show, is the one that locks in for us. There's a lot of different cell phone companies and a lot of different opportunities out there for you. Patriot Mobile you can use without sacrificing any quality or service, and know that you are supporting a company that supports you. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, our first responders, our military, and those who want to see us connected. And it's very good to connect today, especially during live breaking news events like this. Go to patriotmobile.com/Benny or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Benny to get a free month of service. Switch today. That's patriotmobile.com/Benny or call 972-PATRIOT. All right, checking in with my producers, seeing if we got Jack back. Okay, we're waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, as Jack is describing, as we are fixing our technical issues with Jack, again, we lost his audio entirely. It was low, and then we lost it entirely, and we apologize for that. We're working with his team. Let's jump over to Senator Grassley, who had more to say on Fox News about what he has just learned in the Durham declassification annex. This comes from the judiciary. Senator Grassley, take it away. This is the second part of his interview. We played you the first. Let's go.
Here is what we've got from a source with Fox Digital. Let me go ahead and read this statement. It just came in. Ultimately, the release of the classified annex will lend more credibility to the assertion that there was a coordinated plan inside the U.S. government to help the Clinton campaign stir up controversy connecting Trump to Russia. You essentially just said that, Senator. That's what I heard from your answer. Sir, is there a smoking gun in this?
Well, I think the smoking gun kind of dovetails in with things that Tulsi Gabbard has put out in the recent 2 weeks, and things that we had with the Crossfire Hurricane Index that I released a couple weeks ago. Kind of all dovetails into the same thing, but it gets back to the fact that whether you have a Republican or Democrat administration, that there's cover-up, and we shouldn't have transparency, or the public's business ought to be public, and what the FBI does ought to be public as long as their investigations are done. Or if they aren't investigating, if they aren't doing their job, then it should be exposed, and this Durham annex exposes that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your patience here, and we've worked with Jack's team. We're going to welcome him back to the program. Everybody wants to hear from the great Jack Posobiec. My question still stands, Jack. How do you carve up something like this? You elucidated for us beautifully how unprecedented this is. It's clearly the biggest political scandal in my lifetime, for certain. How would you actually charge this?
Yeah, hey, Benny, just want to double check. Is that any better?
Sounds much better. Thank you, Jack.
Awesome.
It was at a
Look,
whisper. We thank you.
So, look, seditious conspiracy, let's go back to the Proud Boys, right? So the Proud Boys were facing, in some cases, 30 years for what they were put through. And excuse me, I should say what they were in many cases pushed into, what many cases ended up being not something they had done at all. This is totally separate from that. This is we are looking and following the evidence where it goes. We are following the evidence now to see these direct lines chapter and verse. And so here's what I would say. You go with the seditious conspiracy charge, you go for perjury charges for anything that's within the 5-year range, got that. But here's the other part of it that's so juicy is, ladies and gentlemen out there, if your last name is Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Lynch, by the way, the first one to flip gets the best deal. And James Comey, he wrote about this classified Durham annex in his book. A lot of people missed this, but I went back and read James Comey's book, every single page of it, so you guys don't have to. And he mentions specifically that tarmac meeting that took place between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton that happened during the 2016 election. And he said there were things that she was doing that raised questions for me about her independence. Well, what was he referring to? He was referring to the fact that, and look, guys, Comey's a squish. Comey is, as they would say, not exactly the type of guy who would hold up under questioning. They are rats. They will all flip on each other. And James Comey is absolutely the kind of guy who is going to flip, and he already showed that crack in his book. And by doing so, by putting that in his book, he's showing you that he's willing and he wants to go after Loretta Lynch because he's upset because he thinks she screwed around in his Clinton investigation. And so he's always been upset about that set him on this other path where half the country now hates him. Remember, he thinks he's the last Boy Scout. His psychology is totally something where he thinks he's the last man standing. He doesn't like Republicans, or he certainly doesn't like Trump, but he loves himself. And that's the key to his psychology. This is, some of the behavioral profiling they teach you in Intel. And so what you want to do is use that to flip him. Use that to make him a witness against the others. Hey, take a plea deal and it will go easier on you. And then you just work your way up the chain. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that going on. And I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we start see that happening again and again with all of these officials. Because I think Comey was a guy that they brought in towards the end of this. I think that this was cooked up by Brennan and Clapper and those guys. And then they bring Comey in at the very end.
They seem really nervous if you look at their public statements. Even the Obama statement is utterly nonsensical. It doesn't make, clearly written under duress.
I've never written by ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah. Out of respect for the White House, these people are bastards, in the White House. It's a wild statement. And they seem to be spooked. The spooks seem to be spooked by this. The behavior has been very often. There's been a lot less yapping than you would assume. They haven't been out talking about it, which is a major tell, actually. That they're not trying to sit there and defend themselves against this. It seems like they're entrenching, and we might actually, we might have actually got these bastards this time with the Soros connection. I'm wondering, Jack, have you read into that? We have the documents right here, and you can see that they're working with the Soros Foundation over what you would assume to be funding of the Steele dossier. Somebody has to pay the millions of dollars to go get this Russian disinformation. Somebody has to pay Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS. So what it looks like is at the very least a co-authorship or a potential understanding between the Soros Foundation and the Clinton campaign that this was an op they were going to run. What is the culpability here for the Soros Foundation?
Well, so this is where you got to follow the money. Remember, Hillary Clinton's campaign had to pay a massive fine for not reporting the funding of the Steele dossier and the work by Perkins Coie and the work by Fusion GPS that was eventually funded through them. They never reported any of that to the FEC. So this all accounted for illegal in-kind contributions, and she had to pay a massive fine for that. And we never. But here's the key: the Clinton campaign, just like all political campaigns, is a donation-based campaign. So that wasn't like she put the money in herself. And of course, we know the Clintons are broke. These are the people who stole pieces of furniture and silverware from the White House on the way out. That's just who they are. They're trash. And so the point is where did that money come from? Where did the initial seed money for the funding of this come from? We never really got that information. It's just always sort of been, she was well funded. We were able to, fund it from the Hillary campaign. But what if what if, and as we're seeing through these emails, and I'm just sort of going through this in real time as well, look, you follow the money. You follow the money and then you pull them in as well. Because remember, John Podesta also had to testify for this over and over. And by the way, the best part of this, when John Podesta had to testify on that question of all, was who was John Podesta's lawyer for his testimony during all of this was Mark Elias. So Mark Elias was operating in a personal capacity as John Podesta's lawyer at the same time that Mark Elias had been the Clinton campaign lawyer, right, in the campaign capacity, who hired Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS in the first place. So the investigators are talking to John Podesta. He said, I have no idea about this. No, the person they should have been asking was sitting next to John Podesta because it was Mark Elias all along. And of course, he never once raised his hand and answered the question to say, well, actually, I was the one that hired Perkins Coie. So guess what? Guess what? Did Mark Elias lie in deposition? Were there any statements that Mark Elias made? Were they client directed statements that Mark Elias was purview to that concern the suborning of perjury? Did Mark Elias ask John Podesta to lie in his deposition as a lawyer? I think Mark has some explaining to do, certainly explaining to do on all of this. And when it comes to the Soros Foundation, when it comes to anyone who is tied to the funding of this, you got to haul them all in. You got to haul every single one of them in. And I'm talking in some cases perp walks, in every case subpoena, because it's absolutely clear. And the minute that you start shaking this tree, that's why they're scared right now. The minute you start shaking this tree, you are going to see people crawl out of the woodwork. That's why you're seeing this whistleblower now, who, by the way, and I really, he or she, I don't know who it is, but this DNI whistleblower will absolutely be a star witness on the intelligence side. Because here's the other trap that they're going to do. And I can already see this coming from a mile away. They're going to claim that Barack Obama's actions were the actions of the president. And the Supreme Court ruling last year, of course, was what? Presidential immunity. So the president has immunity for those actions. And they're going to claim that we were acting on the orders of the president. And as such, our actions are also covered by presidential immunity. That's going to be the play. So I can already see that coming a mile away. And the key here is, what was the presidential action? Is it a presidential action to order the rewriting of an intelligence community assessment to try to smear and derail your incoming successor? No, that's not a presidential act. That's a personal act. So the first hurdle that any of this is going to have to pass is getting past this hurdle of presidential immunity to say, no, Barack Obama was operating outside of his presidential duties while ordering and being a party to all of this.
Yeah, you bring up a great point with John Podesta. You bring up the email hack that sort of got this entire ball rolling. It's mentioned here in the documents and how they're trying to cover up from the Hillary Clinton email scandal, the DNC leak. None of these documents point to any outside hacking of the DNC. And in fact, CrowdStrike said they were the ones hired to come in and do the cleanup operation, and they couldn't even really pin it down. And so what does this say about the emails that were released, the Podesta emails and the Hillary Clinton emails? I mean, are we going to be reopening that, Jack?
I think it's all up for investigation. And look, those files, remember, CrowdStrike goes in and makes images, so digital images of the DNC server. Those digital images, those ISO files, are then taken to CrowdStrike's headquarters. The FBI, when they look into this, they never actually investigate the DNC server. They go and look at these images. And those images, of course, when there's steps in place, are nowhere near the same as looking at the server itself. This, by the way, is one of the things that a lot of people who are I was a human intelligence guy, I was not a cyber guy, but that's every single cyber analyst I've talked to that really looks at this says that's not how you're supposed to do it. You go to the server itself. And in fact, that's in the DNI whistleblower complaint because it does come from the cyber perspective. That's when they're talking about, yes, there's, of course, election infrastructure probes. They go on all the time. Every piece of, every cyber network is constantly getting hit with probes. That's just sort of the nature of the game. And it's always sort of a parlor game to try to track back where it came from. So this idea that the FBI could, with any specificity, claim that it was 100% absolutely Russia, and then the Mueller investigation comes in and says, "Oh, it was definitely this unit, and it was definitely this people." It was bunk. It was bunk from the start. They could not tie it down, and the fact of the matter remains that they themselves even knew from the very start that they couldn't claim with specificity that it was, in fact, Russia. It may have been Russia, or it may have been a leak. And there's a lot of questions about the speed of the download when it comes to these emails that I've been told again and again that you can't get that type of download speed when you're transferring files. We've all tried. We've all been there with downloading files, right? That if you're trying to transfer that many files with that much information all the way around the world, it's going to be much slower. However, these come out so quickly, it looks as though someone had root level access to this server, which would be more in line with someone who had direct access, physical access, which would lead you to think that it may have been a leak.
How deep does the rabbit hole go? Here's the email, Jack. I just want to get your response to this because this is what is being called the smoking gun email that Hillary Rodham Clinton, approved the idea that Trump and Russia, hackers hampering the U.S. elections, and that they should distract people from her own mishandling of emails. And then it goes on to talk about the Soros Foundation and say that George Soros personally knew about this operation and presumably was funding it, because we've never seen a funding source. We know how much the Steele dossier cost. We know what Fusion GPS was paid under the table and over the table. And we've never seen the funding source. So it's looking like the conspiracy has now pulled in the Soros family, and then potentially Hillary Clinton's direct approval. Are we going to see subpoenas for Hillary here? Does Hillary Clinton have some type of immunity in all of this? I haven't seen a Hillary Clinton pardon, and she's never been president, Jack. So thoughts?
No, Hillary Clinton doesn't have immunity here. Obviously, this Julia, we need to track that down as well. But let's not forget also who was Hillary Clinton's foreign policy advisor on the 2016 campaign, someone who very publicly took the ball and ran with it. And if you just go and look on Twitter, who was the first person who ever, and as far as I can track, and me and ALX, I'll put him up as the guy who's better than me at tracking and archiving Twitter, is
Jake Sullivan.
I think the very first person who ever tweeted that Russia and Trump had this type of collusion and from this level with hacking was Jake Sullivan. And Jake Sullivan was the foreign policy advisor for Hillary. He tweets this before she goes and gives her speech. Remember, by the way, she was supposed to give a whole speech about this. And this is one of the other weird just mysteries of 2016. She had announced that she was going to give a speech about this. Jake Sullivan's talking about the speech that she's about to give on it. But Benny, she never gives the speech. So there was an announced speech from Hillary on Russian hacking and the collusion between Trump. Speech never takes place. The Alpha Bank scandal, that planted story in the Washington Post that totally fizzled out. Wall Street Journal was involved, saying that there was a bank server communicating between Trump's tower and Russia, which isn't how computers work at all. Was this whole thing. And Jake Sullivan, who and it's as crazy as this all is. We need to keep putting this in context. That Jake Sullivan becomes the national security advisor. He was working directly under Victoria Nuland. And these people started a war. They started a very real war that is ongoing right now on the ground in Ukraine, where as many as 1 million people, 1 million Christians, 1 million Europeans have been killed in all of this. These people were playing with fire, and they set the entire continent of Europe on flame. And by the way, they could have started World War III, and they don't care. And they say it's our fault. They say it's our fault, and they say you guys are Russian agents, and you're racists, and you're all of this. You were the ones who started all of this. You were. And did you ever think for a second how the Russians would respond? How the Russians would take it when you were accusing them of hostilities, when you were accusing them of criminal malfeasance and perfidy? Of course, you were accusing them of criminal and acts of war. If you're accusing them of acts of war like this against your nation, against your sovereignty, then how would they respond? They would think you were gearing up to go to war with Russia. And of course, that backs them into a corner as well. Benny, these people could have started World War III and gotten us all nuked, and they don't care. They just don't care.
They just want to cover up all of this. I think that it's remarkable that this evidence even still exists, given the fact that Jake Sullivan had a full run of the government for the last 4 years, and Republicans were just so cucked they couldn't ever dig this stuff up. Or Matt Gaetz was saying they didn't want to look mean and call Brennan and Comey and Clapper out in public. I think now it has to happen. Is it too little too late? I don't know. I'm glad that we're getting it. I guess this would be my question to you, given your background, Jack, and my final question to you. Given your background working within our military and in our intel services, we have this tweet from Bongino that has gone viral, and it's him just saying, listen, man, you can't run a country like this. And this stuff has shook me to the core, and I'll never be the same. And we assume that he's looking at sort of the data that we're seeing now, and perhaps far more and far deeper. How do you fix a problem like this? This is going to happen again. It's not like the op's going to go away, right? How do you fix it?
You've got to. So what you've got to do, and what Tulsi Gabbard over at DNI has done that's been so remarkable, is she is now wielding the power of the Director of National Intelligence in a way that no one has ever done before. Because prior to Tulsi, the DNI has always sort of traditionally, since it's been set up post 9/11, has always deferred to the agency heads. And prior to the setup of the DNI, the CIA had ran all of intelligence, ran the entire IC. The 16 intelligence agencies that are out there, and then 17 if you count the DNI, even though it's sort of a umbrella type organization. It's really only been a clearinghouse ever since then. Now, the ICA is put out by the DNI, but even then, the CIA has extreme influence over the National Intelligence Council, the President's Daily Brief, and these intelligence community assessments. They're supposed to speak with the voice of the ICA, which, by the way, isn't supposed to be how intelligence works. None of this is supposed to be how intelligence works. What she's doing is now using the statutory authority of the Director of National Intelligence to say, no, I'm the director. We are cracking this entire thing open because these various agencies wield their power by controlling information in these little silos. And Benny, not to get into too classified stuff, but the way some of these, when people say compartments or compartmentalized information operations or intelligence operations, whatever it might be, counterterror, the compartments could be so small that one or two people might be the only ones who even know the full picture on anything. So something like Jan 6, something like PatCon, the conspiracy that roped up Oklahoma City, or the things involving Waco and Ruby Ridge and the informants that were run. There may only be 1, 2, or 3 agents that even know what was going on, and you're not even talking to other agents that are out there running separate operations into the very thing that you're looking into, because everyone's stepping on each other's toes. This is how they maintain their power, and they use their allies in Congress, they use their allies in Senate to do the same thing, and they hide it all behind, well, we're protecting you for your own safety. We're doing it for your own good. I could go on for hours about this, but the entire intelligence agency and our entire national security system is broken. It needs to be cracked open. It needs to be cracked apart. It needs to be gutted. It needs to be fixed and rebuilt from the ground up, as well as the J. Edgar Hoover needs to be leveled and rebuilt from the ground up to create some kind of organization that serves the American people and not the interests of this shadowy national security state.
I think the only way to do that would be what we're doing right now. And the best disinfectant is sunlight, Jack. And we appreciate you shedding a considerable deal of it on this topic. And we hope that you're back time and time again to talk with us about this, because there's very few people that hold the kind of deep command of the subject matter like you. Everybody follow Jack Posobiec. You probably already do. He's got 3.1 million subs on X. And he's got one hell of an intro there at America Fest. Jack, we will see you, my friend.
God bless, Benny.
God bless. A wild morning. A wild morning. We appreciate you sticking with us as we sort of shadow box through all of this. You never know what kind of a show you're going to have, and it has been a wild one. Chuck Grassley talking about Brennan and Clapper, talking about how this will affect potentially the criminal conspiracy case against them. This is the final Chuck Grassley clip I wanted to get to what's going to happen next? I mean, you've got, like, now the Republicans, given all of this information, the Republicans have no choice. You have to call them in to testify. You have to bring them in. There's no other choice. Let's listen to Grassley.
So John Brennan and James Clapper tried to get ahead of this story because they've got an op-ed already today in the New York Times. The headline reads, "Let's set the record straight on Russia in 2016." And underneath it says, "We finally deeply regrettable the administration continues to perpetuate the fictitious narrative that Russia did not interfere in the 2016 election." They say the focus should instead be on the fact that Russia routinely meddles in our national elections. What would you say to those two men today?
I think that they have been in the news so often recently, and along with Comey, of trying to information out that they've been in the center of all this conspiracy, that they're trying to cover their hind end. That's all I can say about that.
You know, I'm from Iowa, and so is Chuck Grassley, and that's the way the Iowans talk. That's a old-timer talking around there. They're just trying to cover their hind end. There's another old-timer who's actually a little bit younger than Chuck Grassley, but is doing a lot worse, and it's Nancy Pelosi. And since we've had such a rich 2 hours of banging on about Russiagate, the biggest conspiracy in America and American history, wanted to get to this. If we have any time, we're going to get to this. We haven't done a Salt That Live in such a long time. Klein, do we have a new Salt That Live stinger? Klein! All right, this is the last time. Say goodbye to the old Salt That Live. Okay, we have a new stinger after this. I've been asking for it for months. We have a new stinger after this. Say goodbye to the last time you're going to see the old Salt That Live stinger. We're getting in the new one today, but ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a beautiful and heartwarming send-off. We've used this probably thousands of times on the program. It's a very important singer. Everyone say goodbye to it. We're going to salt the lib. This is the setup here is that Nancy Pelosi was called out by Donald Trump for being an insider traitor. Nancy Pelosi has beaten every single hedge fund in America. She's up 750%. We checked from 2014 till now. So that's 10 years. In 10 years, Nancy Pelosi is up 750%. She is an insider traitor. President Trump called her out. They have a Pelosi stock ban act that is rolling through Congress, and we hope that it gets signed. Nancy Pelosi was asked about this on TV and had a freaking meltdown. It is worth salting her and salting her good and hard. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Salt That Lib, Nancy Pelosi.
Let me just read what he said. I'm sorry that we had some sort of technical issue. Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
But I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous. In fact, I very much support the trading of members of Congress. Not that I think anybody's doing anything wrong. If they are prosecuted and they go to jail. But because of the confidence it instills in the American people, don't worry about this. But I have no concern about the obvious investments that had been made over time. I'm not into it. My husband is, but it isn't anything to do with anything insider. But the president has his own exposure, so he's always projecting. He's always projecting. And let's not give him any more time on that, please. We're going forward here, and I'm very proud of my family. And while he might make fun of us, while somebody inspired by him breaks into our home and hits my husband in a deadly fashion, hits my husband over the head, and he thinks that's a riot, I'd rather not go into some of my other complaints about him right now. Rather to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid.
I do interviews a day, every single day, sometimes 3 a day, live in front of you. We have very important people on. We have very interesting people on. We have very curious people on. If anybody ever spoke to me like that on these airwaves, then they'd be banned from the program. I'd publicly humiliate them until they cut their feed. What world are we witnessing? where Nancy Pelosi goes on and scolds CNN about what questions they're allowed to ask her. Do you realize what we've destroyed here on this channel? This is what we are attacking. This is the world. It's interconnected. It's the banality of evil. It's the hubris, the haughtiness, the absolute and total lack of transparency or humility from our wicked elite class who are so guilty and who have never had to answer for any of their crimes. Nancy Pelosi there railing at Jake Tapper that he's not allowed to ask her a question. That is the world that has operated this country for maybe decades. My lifetime. I'm in my later 30s. So certainly in my lifetime, what you've had is you have Pelosi's, please pop up the article. You have Pelosi's walking in. You have Pelosi's walking in and saying, here's what's going to happen. You're going to ask me these questions. Let me assure you, that has never happened in the history of this program. We can prove it. And more importantly, if anyone ever dared talk to us like that, Nancy Pelosi just said, like, Jake Tapper, where's his follow? Is his follow-up? His follow-up, ALX, what's his follow-up? Is his follow-up just to bitch out? Oh, you're right, Nancy. Her sitting there saying that it's just her husband. Her husband's such a genius. Really? Your husband's such a genius, huh? Yeah, he doesn't even have a background in finance or business. He doesn't have a trading background. Her husband's a drunken degenerate who nearly kills people because he's drunk driving around Napa in their vineyard, getting caught in 4K on body cam, wobbling around, smashing into vehicles, nearly murdering people with all of his guy friends and his special little parties that he throws. Here's the photo of Nancy Pelosi when she gets asked an unsanctioned question. Could you imagine? Could you imagine living like that? This is why we beat them. This is why we destroy CNN on a daily basis. This is why they are being sold for pennies. CNN is in collapse. They have no more money. MSNBC is in collapse. They're being spun off by Comcast. MSNBC is about to be sold for the garbage that it is. MSNBC has fired all of their hosts, and everyone's had to take a pay cut. They can't even pay the makeup people anymore. There's no makeup people around here. Don't need them. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's wild. This is why. And because they're organ. I'm so glad that we asked the Operation Mockingbird question of Tulsi Gabbard. I'm so glad we asked that. This is what it looks like. We asked Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe it's the first time a director of national intelligence ever been asked about Operation Mockingbird. We asked Tulsi Gabbard, is that still ongoing? And she said, yes, it is. And in fact, I have to root it out every single day. You, of course, are familiar. You are an educated audience. You know what Operation Mockingbird is. When the intel agencies work directly in telling American media what they're allowed to report on and what they're not. And you just watched it live there at Nancy Pelosi ripping into Jake Tapper for daring to ask about her being an insider traitor. Wild, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, you probably don't have the portfolio of Nancy Pelosi. Nobody does. And it is incredible. Can you grab that? Just really quickly, can you grab the Nancy Pelosi stock portfolio? We had it yesterday. You grab that. It's in the production, boys. This is what Nancy Pelosi is. What I think is fascinating about the Nancy Pelosi stock portfolio is you can see the moment that she became the Speaker of the House. What happened? What happened with her? I think it was Quiver. I think it was a Quiver link. Grabbing that, please. Thank you. That's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope. Quiver, boys. Come on. You got it yesterday. Anyway. You can see that the exact moment that Nancy Pelosi became Speaker of the House and what happened with her portfolio. There it is. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Klein. Look at that. Copy Nancy Pelosi's trades. Boy, look at that little green bar graph. Look at those little lines. There it is. Zoom in. Wow, I wonder, when did Nancy Pelosi become Speaker? When did her power as Democrat Speaker really ascend? right there in 2014. And would you look at that? When Nancy Pelosi controlled the floor and controlled what they were allowed to vote on or fund, when Nancy Pelosi controlled the economy and the fluctuations of the economy, given government largesse and spending and grotesque obesity of government spending, look at what happened to her portfolio. That's remarkable, up 731.8%. Nancy Pelosi needs to be investigated. This is, again, it's not like she has a crack team working for her. She invests through her husband. See how that works? She invests through her husband, who's a drunken degenerate, slamming into vehicles in the dark of night after special parties with his male friends. This is all on tape, by the way. None of that is even speculation. It's all on police officer body camera footage. I missed that news cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have the speakership of the House, Democrats, but what you do have is Allio Capital in your back pocket. You can download this app and you can invest like a champ. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not promising any type of returns like Nancy Pelosi, but I can tell you that the AI on this app allows the investments to really move. And what that means is that they're tracking inflation, shifts in interest rates and global risk, and they're adapting your portfolio in real time for people that have real jobs, people that are not able to do what Nancy Pelosi does all day, control the U.S. economy for her own benefit. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Allio is for you. Download their app in the App Store or the Google Play. Text my name Benny to 511-511. That's ALLIO capital. Text Benny to 511-511 and download the Allio app or text Benny to 511-511 today. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance does not guarantee a result, and consult with your financial professional before making any investment decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, Kamala Harris has said she's not going to run for governor of California. I think should we do a cheer here? Yeah, let's. Nancy Pelosi is not running for governor of California, so she's writing a book. Nancy Pelosi's writing a book about her 107 days running for president. And Kamala Harris has announced this morning that instead of running for governor, and you know why she's not running for governor? She's not running for governor because all the money's gone. No one will pay for it. You got to have people to pay for it. And nobody believes that she's anything worth betting on right now. They're all funding Zoran Mandami. Please do, frankly. And here's Kamala announcing what the world saw on the campaign trail was only part of the story. My new book is behind the scenes look at the experience leading the shortest presidential campaign in history. The book's called 107 Days, and it's out in a month from now. Oh yeah, I wonder how many of these how many copies are going to sell. This will be fun to track. 107 copies. That's right. What? So we can find out how Kamala lost. Like, what are we going to find out? Like, exactly. We've already seen it. We've seen enough. We'll relive it though because we're nostalgic for it. It was so bad. No, it was so bad. We were playing some clips yesterday because what she's doing here is she's announcing that she's going to run for president. She's not running for governor. It's not like she's going to go away. You know, these people, they have some really bad staying power, and you can see it when you try to remove power from them. They all act like Michelle Obama. You know, the narcissism is crippling. And so Kamala Harris it's not like she's going to go silently. She's going to stick around. And she's she's plotting her next move. And so by not running for governor, she's saying that I'm going to run for president in 2028. Mark my words. And this will, of course, create a slaughterhouse for the Democrat primary because then it'll be like a Kamala versus AOC and Zoran Mandami and Bernie Sanders. And it's going to be glorious. It's great news, ladies and gentlemen. It's great news. So whatever you do, don't buy Kamala Harris's book. Let us do the reading for you, and we'll rip it to shreds, and it'll be a lot of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, support our show by subscribing to our podcast, please. You can subscribe following this QR code, or you could just jump onto any app that you wish. Obviously, Spotify is something that we're rolling on, along with Apple Podcasts. Those are the two big ones, but nonetheless, all of the links to the show are available right here on BennyJohnson.com. The verse of the day from Matthew 24. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. It does feel very much like a race. Scriptures often talk about how life is very much a race, and it's tough. Races are tough. Sometimes it feels like a sprint. A lot of times on this show it feels like a sprint. Sometimes it feels like a light jog or a walk. I wish it felt like that more often, but here we are. Nonetheless, make sure that you are enduring. Make sure that you're finishing the race and you're doing it in an honorable way. And then you can look yourself in the mirror in the morning and say, you know what? I did what I could to preserve this nation. I did what I could to be justifiable before God, and that it is your life and your life alone. And you're not going to be able to tell God, someone told me to do this or told me to do that. You are responsible for your actions in this world, and we'll all have to answer for them. And so make sure that your actions are justifiable. Make sure that you are doing what is honorable. Make sure at the utmost that you are seeking truth. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why we have our verse of the day. So we can deliver to you every single show at least one guaranteed truth. Endure and finish the race and be saved by our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It is your boy, Benny, right here, reminding you that in the end, we win, and thanking you for tuning in today. See ya.
In a down market, nobody was making much, but not everyone had adrenochrome. It says, it seemed to cut my learning curve. I was jacked in, booted up. At the end of the week, my brokerage account was worth over $2 million.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
Matt Gaetz? No excuses. This heart is guilty. I ain't no saint. My knees are poison. My soul's in danger. Send me down. Send me down. Oh. Send me low. Send me low. Send me low. Where the flame? Where the flames of justice glow. I deserve the pit. TV screen, stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to life. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty.